Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliot Margolis, and I'm here with my special guest, State Representative Hannah Bowen. Welcome, Hannah.
Thanks, Elliot. Good to be here.
So tell me, you've been in the State House now for
a whole year.
A whole year.
It has flown by.
How do you like it?
I'm enjoying it. It feels like a really interesting time to be in state government with so much unpredictable stuff happening at the federal level. We know there's a lot of challenges at the municipal level, and the state sometimes flies under the radar, but right now there's a lot happening as a result. So it feels good to be involved in that, to get to bring Beverly and Wenham's voices to the table. And yeah, it's been interesting, a learning curve, and a lot of fun too.
Well, I know you've been working on the budget and things, and one thing has always bothered me, and I've asked state reps before you this question. Gloucester Crossing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the train. Why do we have somebody there?
It's a great question. It's a safety reason. But I asked this actually, so we had a tour of the district with members, the House members of the Joint Committee on Transportation. So the current chair of the Transportation Committee on the House side has been touring all the members' districts. So I was able to host the committee here at the beginning of May, and we invited folks from MassDOT, from the MBTA, from MassDOT Aeronautics. We went up to the airport, and we looked at all the different transportation options in Beverly, including the bridge. We can get back to that. But I pointed out to the other members this interesting crossing while we had the MBTA staff there. And they said there is one other place that still has a crossing like this. But yeah, it's a safety issue. There wasn't a way to design the intersection in such a way that you could really be assured that the gates would be enough. And so there is still a human being there to make sure that the intersection is fully clear. And I walked over here from downtown and got stopped by the gates as a pedestrian. And it is, I mean, we are unique with the number of crossings that we have. And they're trying to reduce the number of at-grade crossings system-wide wherever possible. A lot of ours are not possible to change at this point. But yeah, so making sure that they're safe is key.
Well, I'll tell you, I wouldn't want that job. That looks awfully boring
it
to me.
It does look pretty slow.
Okay, but now I'm going to get into a little more serious
stuff. All right.
Okay, in talking about the budget, welfare is a very large part of the budget.
Depends what you mean by welfare, but yeah, benefits, safety net, those are a portion. Healthcare is really the biggest part.
But my question is this. Why do we give so much? Okay, because it seems to me, if I'm going to give you something and you're going to expect me to give you something all the time, you're going to say thank you. And then after a while, you're going to say, gee, maybe I'd like a little more and want more. And we take incentives away from people to improve themselves. And for instance, like even, the food, you go to the supermarket and you see people with the cards or whatever. Okay, they're buying prime steaks, they're buying lobsters, they're buying potato chips. Wait a minute, I don't buy a lot of that stuff because it's too expensive, but I'm paying for theirs. And I'm thinking to myself, we gotta be giving them too much and we're taking incentives away for them to improve themselves. If we took the incentives away to improve themselves but gave them enough, we probably wouldn't have a budget crisis.
So it's a loaded question, and framed that way, it's hard to argue, right? But I would say I see it kind of from a different starting point. So I see safety nets as a critical part of the promise we make to each other in society, that if any one of us might fall on hard times because of health issues, because of job loss, not because we weren't trying, but because, a company gets bought and shrunk, and for any reason, a natural disaster, that when we hit hard times, the people in our community who are not going through the same hard time in the same way will look out for us, and vice versa. It's sort of a mutual commitment that we make to each other. So how you design a safety net that works well is a legitimate challenge. And I think there is always this question of what's the right amount of safety net to make it work as a safety net that people who fall on hard times don't, completely have the ground fall out from under them. But not so generous that people will choose to sort of scam the system. And that's a legitimate debate to have. However, I think what we see in reality is there are a lot of other factors in our society that push people, that a lot of other incentives that push people to go out and work hard, contribute to society, do everything they can to construct the kind of life that they want. And in this country, I think we have almost got too far in the rugged individualism, but we do really value that autonomy, that freedom to build the kind of life you want to build. So when we look at something like food stamps, the SNAP program really is supposed to be supplemental funding to fill that gap for people who are food insecure. A couple weeks ago, I was at the Essex County Community Foundation's release of new data on how Essex County is doing. And the numbers on food insecurity are staggering. It's like 40% of people in our area who have experienced food insecurity in this last year. And that's a lot. So, SNAP benefits are supposed to be that safety net so that people don't go to bed hungry. And it's, primarily kids, seniors, people with disabilities who aren't able to earn what it takes in this economy to buy food and to do everything else. So the level is set at a real subsistence level. And because we value that sort of autonomy and agency so much, we don't say to people, well, because this is a supplemental benefit, you can only buy rice. We say, this is a benefit. It is like created at a level that is just supposed to fill that gap. And if you need a piece of chocolate cake rather than a bag of rice, like that is up to you, just as someone who has brought in income in a different way gets to make that choice. Like where the income source is, we don't force people to make all those choices. We do include some restrictions, right? Like it has to be used on food, and we give people as much choice as we can. And I think that's valuable. So where we set that level of what kinds of benefits are available, healthcare subsidies, food supports, housing assistance, we're really focused on the basics. People having a roof over their head, food in their bellies, healthcare when they need it, that any one of us might need. And we say, it doesn't matter if you fall on hard times, we still as a society want everyone to have those things. So then we have to strike the balance of, can we, at any given time, how's the economy doing? How are people's health? Like, what needs are out there? And can we pool our resources in such a way that we can meet those needs? And I think we strike a pretty good balance. Right now, we are all facing, I think, real pressure in municipal budgets and in the state budget because of healthcare costs. So we've made this commitment to meet people's healthcare needs, and we have allowed the costs of providing care to skyrocket. And unfortunately, it's not nurses and even primary care doctors and many other doctors, even in specialties, that are gathering that difference, right? Like they're not coming home with paychecks that they're satisfied with and that meet their needs, and patients are paying a ton. The payers, whether it's the city who's paying a portion of premiums for staff or at the state level, we're all seeing those costs skyrocket, and the system is still not serving all of our needs. So tackling those kind of costs, I think, are really, really important so that there aren't people profiting off of that safety net and that commitment to each other beyond what's needed. So I'm less concerned about the very limited amount of fraud that does happen, but that we don't really create great incentives for people to just rely on the safety net. It's a safety net, not a real cushion. So while some fraud does occur, it's detected, it's punished, there are penalties for that. I'm more worried about like who's profiting too much off of that. And that's where I think we can do a lot to balance the budget better.
Well, for instance, because nobody, I mean, certainly not me, wants to see anybody suffer.
Right.
Everybody,
That we can agree on. Yeah.
everybody is going to have hard times at some point.
Yeah.
Nobody's immune to hard
Right.
times.
And we don't know when we'll
And-
fall on those
right.
hard times. We can't always save for them. We can't always prepare for them.
And I want to help people that need help. I don't want to help people that won't help themselves. And so I guess the next
That's
question,
fair. The hard part is how do you know?
how
Like,
long
what
are
is
people
it?
on?
Yeah.
How long do we keep people on? They need to have a maximum amount of time for those that can work. Not,
Right, and I
not-
think that's
and I
the
don't
tough
really
part now
care-
is how do we determine that? Like, unfortunately, a lot of the means tested programs, so like you have to demonstrate your need over and over, actually cost more in administration than they're worth in terms of savings by sort of removing people from the roles. So it is hard to strike that balance. I hear the desire to really focus assistance where it's needed, and I share that. How you do it is, it really is about setting levels at the right point where it provides that safety net, but not the perverse incentives. And overcomplicating the administration of it doesn't really seem to help.
Well, I didn't want to get into this, but
Oh, but let's.
frankly, you have too many lawyers in the State House, and they're the ones complicating things because they're the ones that say, well, if we do this, I'm going to make more money. The lawyers are the biggest problem. Not only that, but it seems to me those who legislate should not litigate. Okay?
I won't disagree with you there. And I did not go to law school. I don't think a law school background is necessary to legislate. But I think, yeah, as a society, we over litigate.
Yeah,
So,
we're over, and that's part of the problem. I
Yeah.
mean, you look at all the paperwork. I mean,
I will say there are some excellent attorneys in the State House, but I mean, your underlying point of sometimes a more complicated process actually creates incentives for people to, put lawsuits out there, to find ways to dodge things. So, yeah.
well, you'll pardon me for this, but to me, excellent attorney is an oxymoron. I can't help it. I've had experience, but let's move on.
Sure.
Okay. The State House has had a history of saying to the people of Massachusetts, I don't really care what you think, okay? Because we're going to do what we want. And what you think is totally irrelevant. The audit is a perfect example, okay? What that audit, or the lack of an audit, tells me is that there's incredible corruption in the State House in the Massachusetts because the state representatives don't want to have an audit to see how much money they're stealing from us.
So
And
I
you
see
can't-
how people get there, and I hope I could provide some reassurance. So I understand the lack of trust that we have with all levels of government right now, and there has been and is in various places across our levels of government real corruption happening. So we are all, as residents of this country, the state, we are right to have some suspicion. Like, I think that's fair. And I think it is on elected officials to rebuild that trust. And to rebuild that trust, even if it is sort of being targeted widely at all levels of government, even though some have problems and some don't. So I think that's fair. I think it is on us. And that is one of the reasons I wanted to run for this seat, because my experience on the city council was eye-opening in a lot of ways about how the process matters as much as the outcome. So I'm a policy wonk. Like, I would love to just sit with a spreadsheet and figure out here's the best way to do it. And have learned through other parts of my career, but especially on the council, that just saying to people, look, I did all the work. This is the best answer. We should go with this. Trust me, is not enough, right? Like, you have to bring people along with you. You have to hear criticisms of a plan and credibly say back to people how you are accounting for those criticisms, addressing them, or if you're not going to address them, why not? Like, what is the counter argument? You have to take those things seriously. And I think the legislature has gotten a reputation, in some ways fairly, in some ways less fairly, for not being that responsive and for doing things a little bit more behind closed doors. And that leads to the suspicion that you're expressing, like, well, why aren't things more transparent? It must be because there's something wrong. And like, that's a natural instinct. So one of the reasons I wanted to run for the state level office is to help bring some of that emphasis on process and transparency into the conversation. And I think there are other newer legislators who had similar messages when they were running and similar philosophies trying to get into the mix in the conversation. And, you know, I think the question over the state auditor auditing the legislature has been a real flashpoint for that broader question about trust and transparency in a way that has actually further undermined trust rather than the goal, right, is to bring some more attention to transparency and process and improve those processes. And so I came into the legislature last year having supported the audit ballot question and knowing that the legislature had not yet offered to participate in an audit by the auditor's office. The auditor did put out one report even before the ballot question was passed on how things were working in the legislature based on publicly available information, and could still be doing that now, but the office has chosen not to. And I had questions about, you know, there are constitutional issues being raised, like what exactly are they? And can't we find some way to move forward? The separation of powers is really important. And, you know, I want to see that respected. And I think we all know there's more that could be done. So thankfully, even before I was seated, this session of the legislature had passed new rules that have increased transparency. So committee attendance, committee hearing attendance, committee votes, sort of more of the process has become more public. And that is, I think, thanks to all the voters who showed up to say they wanted more transparency through that vote on the audit question, and have been reaching out to their individual representatives to say, like, we want to know more of what's going on. So I'm encouraged by that, and I hope it's reassuring that, like, it is working. there is movement. And at the same time, I think it has become this question of, like, where is the audit? And I don't think we all agree on exactly what that audit is supposed to be. I think for a lot of us who were supporting more transparency, it is both an external look at the finances of the legislature and additional view into and participation in the decision-making process. But that side of it comes not through an audit by the auditor's office. It comes through holding individual representatives accountable, participating, you know, asking for the information, giving us feedback, and for us to really invite that participation and you know, deliberate on it. So it's been a challenging issue to navigate because I'm fully on board with greater transparency and pushing for that. I'm seeing some of that happening slower than we might like, but happening. And to hear the conversation get really destructive and actually further erode trust in even our ability to improve things is hard, because like, to what end, right? Like, we want a more transparent government. We want to understand what's going on more. Just saying that no improvement is good enough is hard. So I think one of the things that I'm still hopeful about is the fact that again, like, there's more attention on how the legislature works, on how decisions are made, and more interest in participating. So through this discussion, especially over the last couple of months, a lot more people have become aware of the fact that there are audits, financial audits, conducted by an outside firm that has to adhere to auditing standards. Now, I understand when an entity hires its own auditor, no matter how much you trust the accounting profession, the auditing profession, and standards, it doesn't necessarily build as much trust as having someone else choose that auditor. But those exist. They hadn't always been easily accessible on the legislature's website, but now they are, thanks to the pressure. And a lot of people have now become aware that the comptroller's office publishes every salary, including legislators, including their stipends, all state employees with a few exemptions for good reasons, and every bit of spending that goes out the door, sorted by agency, department, year, and you can see it all, and it's updated mostly monthly. So you can see what is the budget that we passed, what money went out the door, who were those contracts to. All of that is already publicly available. It's not the easiest to sort through. I can understand wanting investigative journalists, even the Office of the State Auditor, to dig through it and help process it for us, because, going through spreadsheets after spreadsheets is not everyone's cup of tea. But to say that it's not available or that there's a lot being hidden, I think goes too far for what the reality is right now. And thankfully, because of this conversation, I think a lot more of us are seeing those tools that are available.
Okay, but now, there is a lack of trust for sure. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that's real important, allegedly, our governor is a lawyer. Okay?
A former attorney general.
From my perspective, she ought to be in jail. Okay? She swears to take care of the law. Mm-hmm. But she breaks
and we all
it
have
every
that
day.
oath of office
She
to uphold
breaks
the
it
Constitution
every day.
and the laws.
Okay? The legislature breaks it every day. What part of the word illegal don't these people understand? And how much of our money is going to illegals as opposed to citizens in this state that really need it? And isn't that a good reason why there is a budget crisis?
So I know we've talked about this issue before, and the question of not having current legal immigration status is not the same as, a criminal conviction. There are some people who have both.
Why do I have to stop at a red light? What makes the state legislature be able to say, this law we're not going to follow, but this law you have to?
If you go through a red light, you face the consequences of that, which are
probably a fine.
Ticket, a fine. Yeah.
But why do I have to? Why should I be fined
due process.
when other people come to this country? We feed them, we clothe them, we give them some place to live. That's a lot of money.
It is a talking point that we hear a lot. I don't see it actually play out in statistics. So most immigrants, whether they follow a very long, circuitous, hard to navigate process, or they sort of operate outside of that process, are working hard, are contributing to taxes in some way, and are not, are adding to our communities. So I think this week it's particularly hard to talk about for me because we just saw a Supreme Court case go through yesterday that will allow the Trump administration to remove temporary protected status with no review, sort of on a whim, regardless of the actual situation.
And that's no different. That's no different than Obama deporting 3.5 million people with absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Well, I think-
But the Democrats said that was okay. But the Democrats don't think it's okay for Trump to do the same thing.
I
The
think
hypocrisy is incredible.
I think the process has been very different. I agree that the immigration process has been broken through both Democratic and Republican administrations. But I think what's happening now is that people who have no home to go home to and are living here in our community, in Beverly, in Wenham, with jobs, with work status, they followed a legal process, they have legal status, that status is being removed. And what are they supposed to do? That is the question. There's no process that makes any sense to actually deport people. It's not a logical process. And so we're going to feel, like I was talking about healthcare costs earlier, one of the things that's breaking all of our budgets, our healthcare costs are going to increase if we don't have healthcare workers doing all the jobs they're currently doing, paying the taxes they're currently paying. So even if you only care about the economic side of things, which I don't, but if the argument is like immigrants are more of a drain on society than a contribution, like we're going to feel what contribution has been made soon if this goes through. And so even if that is the primary motivator for a different kind of immigration policy, I think it falls apart when you look at the actual numbers and the actual experience. And our economy is already feeling the pressure of the type of immigration enforcement that this administration has been pursuing, which is different than past styles of enforcement. We're already feeling that pressure. And if you think about the last few weeks with the experience we've had of hosting international visitors for the World Cup, like the energy in this area has been amazing.
Yes,
it's
but
still ongoing.
They came here with visas and everything
Yeah.
else.
There's
nothing.
As has everyone who is currently on temporary protected status. They came through a legal process seeking asylum. It is no different. The contribution is the same, and I think we need to be aware of that.
For the past 30 years, this country has had immigration issues, and Congress has not done its
That
job.
we can agree on.
And
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
we have a problem because Congress doesn't do its job.
Yeah.
So there's no trust in Congress.
Right.
And
it allows this issue to become a talking point because there is something that needs to be solved there.
Yep.
And, depending what your political views are, it's really easy to turn it into this like hot button issue because we haven't actually made a system that works. If we made a system that works, I think we wouldn't be having the same kind of conversations that can, get into rhetoric that's really dehumanizing. And I think we would be able to have the conversation actually on economic
agreed.
terms.
We can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Our time is up.
Already.
That half hour goes by pretty quickly.
It does.
But this was fun.
Yeah.
I hope you all learned something from it because you're seeing two different points of view. And thank you for watching.